On November 19th, a 22-year-old with multiple guns entered Club Q in Colorado Springs, shot and killed 5 people, and wounded many others. A few days after that tragedy, vandals defaced a large Focus on the Family sign outside the Christian Ministry's headquarters in the same Colorado city. The spray-painted words read, "Their blood is on your hands. 5 lives taken." Underneath the sign were 2 metal placards with a Bible verse written on them from 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 14 and 15. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, so it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds. First of all, impressive way to use Bible verses. Second, even as someone who strongly opposes just about everything Focus on the Family stands for, my initial reaction was, this is bad. Vandalism is bad. We are just feeding into the conservative Christian persecution complex. I didn't like it because it sort of shifted the attention away from the shooting. Now, a Twitter account for Colorado People's Press first publicized this incident with pictures and included a letter of explanation signed by the Front Range queer community, which took credit for the defacing. That hasn't been verified as I'm making this video, but I will assume it's true for the sake of talking about it because they took immediate ownership and because local police haven't named any other suspects. There's not much information though on who's in the group or what the group does. Based on a quick Google search, I don't even think the group existed before the Club Q attack. The letter said that the fact that the mass shooting occurred in Colorado Springs was no accident, because it's a city steeped in homophobia, transphobia, and white supremacy. It cited Focus on the Family as a group with a desire to rid the world of all queer people, noting the group's support for anti-trans legislation, conversion therapy, and falsified research. To be clear, even if, for whatever reason, we learn this group didn't commit the vandalism, what that letter said is not wrong. Colorado Springs is a haven for white evangelical Christianity, and Focus on the Family has led the charge against LGBTQ people ever since James Dobson founded it. In response to the vandals, Focus on the Family's current president, Jim Daly, issued a pretty basic statement condemning the mass shooting and also condemning the vandalism and calling for peace and unity. He said things like, "This is a time for prayer, grieving, and healing, not vandalism and the spreading of hate." I know. It takes a lot of chutzpah for the head of Focus on the freaking Family to accuse anyone else of spreading hate. That's like Chick-fil-A calling for everyone to tone down the homophobia. Daly also said in his response that the victims of the shooting were in their prayers, and so were the people who did this mischievous and unwarranted defacing of our ministry's property. It's ridiculous for Jim Daly to pray for peace and pray for the victims when his organization has lobbed grenade after grenade in the culture wars. But regardless of his bland yet thoughtless statement, the whole incident raises an important question. Was the vandalism a good idea? And I know a lot of you are probably yelling at your screens already. No, of course not. How could anyone suggest defacing someone else's property is justified? We're the smart ones. We use our words. It's not very friendly of you to even suggest this may have been okay. I know. That was my gut reaction too. I mean, I do get where all that's coming from. The graffiti may draw media attention, as intended, But most of that attention frames Focus on the Family as the victim. Headlines say that Focus on the Family was vandalized, not that the group experienced karma. I worry that those headlines might make people sympathize with a monstrous organization. Even Daley's comments read like a statement intended to create good publicity for his group, calling for prayers for the victims at Club Q, while ignoring any role his group may have had in the national rhetoric against LGBTQ people. He seriously said his group was positioned to help and support the needs of struggling individuals and families. And media outlets reported that verbatim, as if any of the victims' families or their friends are about to go to Focus on the Family for help. More than anything, if you oppose the graffiti, it might be because there's no direct link between Focus on the Family and the shooter. It's not like the shooter was a member of the organization. There's nothing suggesting he was inspired by the ministry to commit his heinous act. That means activists targeted an innocent organization to make a general point. It's like looting a random store in the middle of a riot. What did that store owner ever do to you to deserve this? But even if the idea of vandalism is off-putting to you, there are ways to defend what the culprits did. And I think it's useful to keep that in mind as you read stories about this incident. Not because I want to see more Christian groups or churches vandalized, I don't, but because it's worth exploring the possible motives of the people who did this. This isn't a defense of vandalism, by the way. Consider this more like a thought experiment that answers the question, is there any way to see this graffiti as useful? And I think there are 3 ways to justify it. Reason 1. The graffiti put a spotlight on a powerful Christian group famous for spreading anti-LGBTQ bigotry. Outside of gun safety measures, which Republicans oppose almost universally, one way to prevent future hate crimes like the one at Club Q is by going after the sources of LGBTQ hate. And white evangelical churches and their related ministries have been at the forefront of spreading lies about LGBTQ people for decades.
I believe the Bible says that they should be made unalive.
You enjoy murder. You enjoy malignity. You enjoy hating God. Look, there's only one group that enjoys that. It's the pride parades going up and down the street. Yeah. And it's great when trucks accidentally go through those, parades.
FBI, open up!
And that I'm calling, they always say this, you're calling for the death. You're calling for the death. No, I'm just saying the government should do their job. So I can share it on Twitter with that fat sounding guy, that atheist guy, what's his name, Mehmet or whatever? What's his name, Brother Sean? The guy that keeps showing our clips on Twitter all the time?
We should all be talking about the significant role their religion and their adherents and the people they routinely elect play when it comes to the treatment of LGBTQ people in this country. From bathroom bills to opposing marriage equality and same-sex adoptions to making slippery slope arguments about bestiality and pedophilia, Focus on the Family has long given evangelicals the tools they need to make the lives of LGBTQ people objectively worse. They think there's something wrong with you if you're gay. They think you need to be fixed. They think parents who are accepting of their queer kids are bad parents. There's a reason their critics often yell back, "Focus on your own damn family." If nothing else, the people at Focus on the Family, all of them, sincerely believe gays and lesbians who are not celibate and are not ashamed of their sexual orientation will spend eternity in hell. They also believe trans people are lying to themselves and don't actually exist. They're just confused. Simply put, nothing symbolizes white evangelical Christianity in Colorado Springs, or anywhere else really, more than focus on the family. If you want to make a statement against the harm caused by that powerful religious demographic, it's the obvious target. As one online commenter put it, the sign wasn't defaced, it was edited for honesty. Reason 2. The graffiti is relatively harmless. The words that were spray painted can be covered up. The paint can be cleaned up. It is at best a minor inconvenience for an organization that took in over $131 million in 2021, according to its most recent financial statement. And also, this is key, no Focus on the Family staffers were harmed in the making of the vandals' message. The culprits didn't hurt anybody. The injury to Focus on the Family is insignificant compared to the actual murders that occurred at Club Q. Seeing the outrage from many conservatives online, I'm reminded of the recent acts of vandalism by the Just Stop Oil climate activists. You may have seen them in the news and rolled your eyes at them because they've thrown soup and paint on famous works of art in museums all over the world. Sure, it's easy to dismiss the protesters as idiots focusing their outrage in the wrong direction. But after you roll your eyes at them, ask yourself this: what's more concerning? The mostly temporary damage they're causing to the paintings? Or the permanent damage politicians and corporations are causing to the environment? If your instinct is to defend the art, perhaps you need to rethink your priorities. That's the point those activists are making. Similarly, what do you think is more concerning? The temporary damage of Focus on the Family sign, or a massacre at an LGBTQ nightclub? If you've spent more time thinking about Focus on the Family, what is going on in your head? Reason 3. Nothing else seems to be working. When it comes to the acceptance of LGBTQ people, things only seem to be getting worse. Christian nationalism is growing in the Republican Party. Social media sites like Facebook, and especially now Twitter, routinely allow anti-LGBTQ posts to spread without serious moderation. Right-wing propaganda outlets like Fox keep running segments designed to provoke outrage against trans people. Even some well-known atheists have spread many of those same anti-trans arguments. Mainstream media outlets like The Atlantic and The New York Times have a habit of publishing irresponsible, badly researched pieces about transitioning that make it harder for younger trans people to get the support they need. School boards are being overtaken by right-wing activists who want to ban books that portray LGBTQ people in a positive light. Okay, let's be honest, they want to ban books that portray LGBTQ people, period. Congress is literally on the verge of passing an extremely basic bill to protect marriage equality nearly a decade after it became legal nationwide, because even that is under threat by a radicalized Supreme Court. Senate Democrats still won't do what's necessary to pass the Equality Act to prevent anti-LGBTQ discrimination. We are not moving in the right direction. No amount of debunking those lies, and no amount of calls for love and tolerance and unity are enough to counter the constant fire hose of hate coming from the religious right and their conservative allies. And J.K. Rowling. So when 5 people are murdered by a gunman in an LGBTQ bar, what the hell else can you do to get anyone to pay attention? Look, it's not that vandals going after the Focus on the Family sign will change any minds. I don't think anyone's suddenly gonna be enlightened. I see the vandalism against the Focus on the Family sign not really as an act of vandalism, but as a sign of frustration by people who have tried to do things the right way year after year, only to see things get progressively worse. Nathan J. Robinson of the left-wing magazine Current Affairs wrote a response to the climate activists throwing soup on art that I felt was appropriate here. He said, "They're not sure what to do because it's hard to know what to do." And I sympathize completely. They care about something that matters. Perhaps their approach isn't that well thought out, but what are you doing? Are you risking your freedom for a morally important cause? And what do you think they should be doing instead? Given what the LGBTQ community has suffered, especially at Club Q and Pulse a few years before that, the spray paint outside Focus on the Family's headquarters is hardly worth the attention it'll inevitably get. Even if the Christian ministry didn't cause the Club Q shooting, there is no shortage of LGBTQ people who have suffered because of what the group actively promotes. Notice that Jim Daly, in a statement, didn't say anything about Focus on the Family's role in perpetuating LGBTQ lies. I promise he won't say anything in the future either. That's because, of course, he believes those lies. No matter how much Focus on the Family doesn't want to be known for its bigotry, it will keep pushing the same anti-LGBTQ propaganda because it is core to who they are. Everyone who works for them is complicit in the suffering that LGBTQ people have gone through, even if they don't pull a trigger, and even if they're appalled by what happened at Club Q. Daly will never acknowledge the role his organization plays in perpetuating queer hate because his job depends on him being a genial spokesperson in defense of it. This isn't about some theological disagreement. One side wants to peacefully coexist. The other wants to deny LGBTQ people civil rights, turn society against them, and make their lives a living hell. The side that calls itself Christian isn't the one working towards peace. So yeah, Focus on the Family had its signs spray painted by vandals. So what? They're not the victims here. No one within that organization would ever want to switch places with the people they've bullied, directly and indirectly, over the years. That doesn't mean another group should spray similar graffiti on other ministries or churches. This one is arguably effective only because it's unique and because it's at this place in Colorado Springs. If Focus on the Family really wants to make the most of this, here's what they should do. And we all know they love listening to atheists. They ought to issue a statement explaining how, in the light of the massacre in their community, they will stop using their resources to harm LGBTQ people. That's not asking them to change their religious beliefs, only to focus elsewhere. They could, for example, prioritize another one of Daly's pet issues: adoption. They could do everything in their power to make sure kids who need a home are matched with loving, qualified parents willing to take them in. Even if some of those parents, like ones in same-sex relationships, fall outside the ministry's current preferred options. Imagine what a positive impact that could have. Do you know how hard it would be to criticize Focus on the Family if the thing they were really good at was getting foster kids and newborns in loving homes? They'll never do it. I have no faith in any large Christian ministry to do the right thing, especially when its donations come from people who want them to do the opposite. But if any group has the power to shift how white evangelicals treat LGBTQ people, it's Focus on the Family. They could lead the way. They could seriously change the organization's awful, hateful legacy. It would be a win-win for everyone. But don't hold your breath. They are just gonna complain about spray paint.